Hello and welcome to a new episode of Paper Lantern History with Samyukta Nair. In this episode, we will be discussing the historical accuracy of the costumes in the film RRR. Originally filmed in Telugu and dubbed into several Indian languages, RRR is a major hit on streaming platforms and has also been doing the rounds on the international awards circuit. It won the Golden Globe for Best Original Song for Naatunaatu and has also been nominated for an Oscar in the same category. The movie itself is a fictionalized account of an undocumented period in the lives of Indian freedom fighters Alluri Sita Ramaraju and Komaram Bhim. The film is set in the 1920s, during the last 2 decades of the freedom struggle, and this was a very interesting period in Indian dress history, as the early 20th century was a time when traditional Indian wear coexisted with more European styles in urban areas, thanks to the British influence. And upper middle class and upper class people at the time often incorporated both Indian and European elements into their daily style. This is also a period with plenty of surviving photographic evidence that gives dress historians and costume designers plenty of material to work with when working on or discussing a period film such as RRR. Without further ado, let us take a deep dive into the British India of the 1920s and discuss whether or not the costumes worn by the characters in the movie are historically accurate. In the first scene, we are introduced to the Gond tribe of Andhra Pradesh, where a young girl named Malli is drawing a tattoo on the hand of the wife of a senior British officer, Lady Scott. Historically, the Gonds have a rich legacy of art and painting, which has been depicted in the movie. While at first glance the tribal characters seem to be suitably attired in simple draped fabrics, heavy jewelry and facial tattoos, all of which give them the homogeneous appearance of belonging to a single tribe, we find on closer examination that their outfits are not historically accurate. Some online research has revealed that the women of the Gond tribe of Andhra Pradesh in the 1920s appeared to have 2 styles of dressing. The first is where they draped their saris like this, with the pallu going over the chest and around the back, leaving a significant amount of skin exposed. A second surviving image shows a Gond woman wearing a lower garment with nothing on top, save for some necklaces. Since the Gond tribe lived in congruence with the elements in the forests of Andhra Pradesh, it makes sense that they would choose to wear sparse clothing due to the heat. However, I can understand that the filmmakers probably couldn't dress the tribal women in a completely historically accurate way, as this would probably not have passed the censor board with anything less than an A certificate, which in turn would have significantly cut down the audience of the film. Nevertheless, it would have been interesting to see the other elements of Gond dressing being adhered to, such as the heavy nose rings, which seem to have been a trademark of the women. Additionally, there is no surviving evidence of the Gonds of Andhra Pradesh ever sporting facial tattoos, so that could have been avoided. Moving on to the outfits worn by Ram, one of the main characters of the film, played by actor Ramcharan. He is a police officer and so spends a significant amount of time in his khaki uniform. However, the uniform itself has several modern elements, making it quite different from a police uniform that would have been in use during the British Raj. The first and most obvious difference lies in the cut and silhouette. The shirt and straight trousers worn in the movie are a much more modern style, which was not how Indian police officers dressed in the 1920s. They wore a long khaki tunic and jodhpurs, trousers that flared out at the thigh and were fitting below the knee. Their uniforms did, however, have brass buttons, as seen in the film. However, there is no evidence of their ever having worn name tags, especially not the black name tags which we see them sporting in the film, which have a very modern appearance. Additionally, the uniforms all look spanking new, like they were tailored specially for the film. This is a problem because uniforms were, and still are, quite expensive to make, so it's not likely that anyone except the most high-ranking of officials would have had uniforms that looked brand new. Most lower and mid-level policemen would have likely had 1 or 2 uniforms that they wore on rotation, and given the highly physical nature of their job, the uniforms would have had to be repeatedly darned due to wear and tear. Therefore, it would have been far more believable to give the uniforms a more lived-in look, which could have easily been achieved by washing them a few times before filming or by deliberately creating small tears and then darning them. With regard to his off-duty wear, Ram's style draws heavily from the European influence, which is understandable given that many of his colleagues were British. We mainly see him sporting shirts, trousers, suspenders, and brogues, all of which very much existed in the 1920s. However, the cut and fit of his clothes and shoes is distinctly modern, making them appear like they were purchased from a high-end 21st century menswear boutique. Here are pictures of the same clothes and footwear from the 1920s. As you can see, there is a clear difference in the cut and shape that sets them apart from their modern counterparts. Coming to the last outfit worn by Ram in the film. The hair and beard are clearly inspired by existing photos of the real Alluri Sita Ramaraju, and the mythological Ram outfit is based on how he has been immortalized in the Indian imagination, as can be seen from this statue. While we don't know if the real Alluri Sita Ramaraju ever dressed like this, it certainly serves to elevate him and his deeds during the freedom struggle to an almost godlike status. Next, we come to the character of Bhim, played by Junior NTR. A member of the Gond tribe, Bhim goes undercover as a Muslim man named Akhtar when Malli is kidnapped by Lady Scott in order to track her down and return her safely to the tribe. During this time, he dresses mainly in kurtas, salwars, and skull caps, all of which fit into the image of an early 20th century Muslim man in India. However, towards the end of the movie, when his true identity is revealed, he drops his disguise and dresses like this. The turban is clearly inspired by existing imagery of the real Komaram Bhim and is therefore accurate. However, the outfit on the whole tends to be something more out of a 70s or 80s Bollywood dacoit film and not what an actual freedom fighter would have worn, even when on a mission. Now, we must move on to the character of Sita, Ram's fiancée, played by Alia Bhatt. Her outfits are probably the most historically accurate in the film. In the scene where we see her as a young woman, she is wearing a dhavani or half sari that was widely worn among young women in South India at the time. The cut and style of her clothes, her hairstyle and jewelry are all on point. Later, we see her as a slightly older lady, probably in her early 20s, wearing a beautiful green sari with a puff sleeve blouse. The only issue here is that puff sleeve blouses were not in fashion in the 1920s. They came into style only in the 1930s or 40s, making Sita 10 or 20 years too early in her style. Additionally, the small mangtika she sports throughout the film is a more modern style. Mangtikas were considerably larger and rounder in 1920s South India, and women did not wear them on a daily basis anyway. Now it is time to talk about the outfits worn by the British women in RRR. On watching the movie, my first impression was that while some effort seems to have gone into the outfits worn by the Indian characters, almost no research seems to have gone into the costumes of the British characters apart from the military uniforms. This is especially apparent in the costumes worn by the female characters. The 1920s were a very defining period in British, American, and Western European fashion. They were a turning point of sorts, where silhouettes got slimmer, hemlines higher, and hair shorter. Women began to abandon the no makeup that was a result of Victorian sensibilities and started experimenting with darker lipstick and thin, arched brows. Many of them took the daring step of cutting their hair into short bobs, and finger waves also had a major moment in this decade. However, none of this has been explored in RRR. The British women have been dressed in a way that is more late Victorian or early Edwardian, and several pieces in their wardrobe, such as these blouses, are very 21st century, and similar blouses can be found in malls and on shopping apps today. While fashions from the Western world may have taken a little longer to reach India in the early 20th century, they certainly wouldn't have been decades off the mark. Also, there is photographic evidence of British women in India sporting the drop-waist dresses, bob cuts, and cloche hats that defined the 1920s. Another point we need to keep in mind is that the British population in India found the heat rather difficult to deal with after the cooler climes of the UK and adapted their wardrobes accordingly. On casual occasions, many dressed in white and beige, and the women likely wore straw hats, all to deflect the heat. They definitely would not have worn furs, especially not when visiting a tribe in the forests of South India, as we see Lady Scott, played by Alison Doody, doing. Additionally, the party dresses worn in the Naatunaatu song sequence seem like a major missed opportunity to me. Here are some examples of beautiful 1920s party dresses that could have done wonderfully in this scene. Instead, they chose to use dresses that seem to have been designed with a vaguely Victorian, vaguely Civil War America silhouette in mind, which does not fit into 1920s British India. A little bit of research could have gone a long way in adding authenticity to the costumes. I firmly believe that period films have a responsibility to at least try to be historically accurate, as this adds to their overall believability and credibility. With the vast resources available to them, I definitely feel that the makers of RRR could have done a better job with the costumes. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please hit like and subscribe to my channel to stay tuned for more such interesting videos.